Hi, everybody. Monday on Astral Oracles. To also satisfy all the tastes and predilections out there, I feel it's good if I try to weigh the subject matter so we move a little dialectically from one pole to the other, and that is, of course, the fifth dimensional experience of energy flow. It's the circuitry where things flow from the polar opposites of negative and positive, if you want to construct them that way. So we are going to the stars and we're going to speak to the Elohim. But to dive into the fifth dimension, consider these circuitries, because this is a lot of the fourth dimensional neuroses. So much of the trouble that we've gotten ourselves into begins with language, and the fourth dimensional experience begins with somebody, probably somewhere in the grasslands of Africa, having an epiphany around language. And my sense of it is also that that was a woman. So there was a female luminary or messiah who began the experience into the 40, and there will also be, as I've told you, she's coming, like there will be a female messiah luminary to begin to mark the beginning of the 5D, and if she's not already among us, she will be very soon. So that will be fascinating. But the 5D then has to do with these higher circuitries where the world of semantics, the world of description, the world of language, and the reality that it points to are again merged. And this means that negativity and positivity are then again connected in the full framework of understanding. Because so much of the trouble that we get into with language is getting the exact descriptions. And language is an operating system. It's kind of the software that's running your biological system, and that's super advanced because it means that you can gain access to experience that isn't localized. So you can you just take the advantages in that situation of the grasslands in Africa, because all of a sudden you begin to be able to not only control other people's moods by bringing forward vibrations, voices that stir their nervous system into specific frequencies, which is of course a powerful skill in a tribal situation. Still a powerful skill, but you also begin to be able to describe and convey information that's beyond the immediate reach of where you are, and that's of course an absolutely massive evolutionary advantage, because all of a sudden you can have storages and you can track hertz, you can keep up with growth cycles, you can do all these things that we get to know as prognostication, like our ability to get into to time and understand that. So language is a powerful tool, because it is this software interface that allows us to describe and measure out the world and give it accurate descriptions. And we've been engaged with this. So when we talk about the discovery of America, or the New World, well, the context in which this actually still makes sense to talk about is that this is the discovery of literal or encyclopedic culture of those continents. There have been people in the Americas a lot longer than they have here up in Doggerland, England, and Denmark and whatnot. Like, but so it's much older country, of course, also geologically. But its discovery in 1492, its discovery by cartography, history, botanical sciences, all that stuff, where all of the sudden, that massive data bank that we have been creating through the 4D of what is the world, what is language, how do we describe it in encyclopedia. So from Aristotle to Voltaire, right? Like this project of like getting the world into its right and proper boxes. And what are like some super classic neuroses in the 4D? Then it's things don't belong in this place. So take something like bugs and spiders in our houses. Now I'm living in this old house, and of course, then they're also kind of helpful to the ecosystem of the house and keeping other bugs down. And a house without insects is both an impossibility, but it's also not necessarily a healthy option. I get to say that I don't live in Australia or anything, right? But it's to say that again, like this 5D experience, that energy is all around us, and we're surrounded by life, and that's all right. Where the 4D goes, well, this doesn't belong in here, and this is a box, and this box needs to be kept clean of these things. And that's very much where people get in trouble with personal boxes than our personal operating systems or self concepts. Because where is the glitch here? And we've intuited where is the glitch. It's the narcissus. It's the self concept that doesn't reverb, that's dislocated from the ego, the reverberation, the refrain of the world, where it's adjusted to that female principle of the world, and then it's stuck in this like hardened shell of this is who I am, and this is the only thing I'm able to look at, and anything that disturbs that will have to wither and die away. So we put us into this very small box of the ego, the self-concept, that we're now breaking free from. And you can simply like look wherever you want in global culture, and you'll see that the more people are identified completely with their ego self-construct at the moment, the more they're struggling. And we had like a couple of decades here also with the discovery of these like self-promotional technologies where we've been able to run wild with that, and now that's not really a possibility anymore because we've desensitized ourselves to it. So we kind of see behind these frail hardened masks, and of course an expression of it is kind of like the Botox smile, right? Like injecting yourself with toxins in your face to get it to stiffen and harden in ways that's supposed to look appealing, but that of course moves away the vitality and rigidity from the area that you paralyze. So like it's that movement into again the steady system, but not a fall back into the 3D of voiceless animality, but a rise into these free flowing concepts. So like 4D arguments, right? If you visit some more like trollish combative corners of the internet, I'm I'm aware a lot of people get their kicks out of arguing out there. And the fact is, of course, that it's the totality of everything is correct. It's just how we fit it in to our place of description. So let's take a character like John F. Kennedy, for instance, because like the Kennedy image that I was born into was still, somebody who also young, dynamic, shook up the entrenched structures, discovered the power of television, appealed to young people, put light into sort of the civil rights movement, and paved the way from some of those reforms, and avoided the Cuban Missile Crisis, and a great diplomat and a kind of rock and roll president. Um, and then of course an image that's kind of also risen with the time is, speed addle, daddy's boy, sexual predator, narcissist, serial cheater, and that's of course also a predicate that kind of fits on the life of John F. Kennedy. And both things are essentially true, right? And the totality of the men you'll be able to see when you move up into the higher realms, or you die like the heavens, right? You can look up everything and then see it from all perspectives. But down here in like these 4D transitions, we're very much struggling. Once it's like, which parts of the story do I need to eliminate, and which ones can I accept? And the thing you'll note is that you will know it by their fruits, so you can identify what emotional residue arises from the stories that people connect themselves to. And an excellent example of this is Holocaust denial, because I think I'm not going to discuss whether or not the Holocaust happened. Of course it did, but if you kind of look at it, like, it seems to be a coordinated effort where people who have an interest in uh, hating the Jews, basically, would like to believe that this is another kind of mass conspiracy of their purported enemy, and therefore, they invest themselves in this. But I think you can ask yourself, is like, does it seem to produce healthy emotional residue, buying into this alternative description of reality? And then I'd argue, no, I'd rather not have coffee with a table full of Holocaust deniers. Um, and on the contrary, I think you can say that there are, of course, like alternative descriptions of reality floating around. We're working with some of them here, who which generate positive surplus, which generates this kind of helpful love, positive energy that flows around and is somehow also contagious to the human oversoul. And I think that that's being done in a lot of small corners around the planet and on the internet, where people are sort of growing these frequencies, and they're actually gradually tapping into the collective in positive and helpful ways. Um, so it is definitely fascinating times where we're living in. But this transition into to the cycle of the battery, where the positive and the negative are both held and seen and become images that contain the whole. It's a higher and higher fractal, and it's building higher and higher iterations of itself, somehow, this great energy. Because this is one of the things that I then seem to have tapped into, beyond this spiritual destruction and rebuilding the 7 years under the waterfall, as they call it in the Chinese tradition. Um, Beyond this experience of being like turning yourself into the zero to become the one, there seems to be a revelation of some of the archetypal patterns that we exist within. And this is something that they've shown me in many channelings, and I think it's come up in live streams and private sessions, and around these messages of the 12. Uncial, I think, is the term of systems that describe things in 12. Um, but whether you want to describe this musically, mathematically, uh, phonetically, semantically, it seems to reveal some kind of geometric, mathematical imprint that lies at the heart of the intersection between matter and consciousness. And so you'll very often find that we are divided in soul groups into 12 basic themes. And one is, for instance, the tinkerer. So the technologue, the person who brings forward things, the inventor. And then another is the priest, or the wise woman, the priestess, um, like this figure who communicates with the unseen. And these then have, of course, tons of variations and can be repeated into different expressions, but they all lead back into that specific soul group. And you'll never in your incarnational history explore any patterns that lie outside of this soul group. Then you kind of have to return to source and then be filtered through it. So those are some of the things that are intuited in the 12 tribes of Israel in the Torah, for instance. These idea that we actually belong to these over frequencies. And then there are different bodies or iterations, awake parts of that soul group alive at different points, that's feeding into it and back into this kind of central station of awareness, with their experiences at different levels of participation or knowledge of what's going on. So over here at the oracles, over here at this kind of priestly 12th of the divine overmind, of the universal oversoul, there are several of us who are alive, who are discovering that we are alive at the same time. Um, and there's a dude who's called Henry, I know, for instance, who I met in Oxford a couple of years ago, who I like have some sense that our paths will cross again, and he's discovering some of the same stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm also beginning to connect then to other human imprints who seem to have been aware of this vibrational layer, the layer of connection that we're at right now here in this system, but in different time configurations. So there are two lifetimes, and one is at Delphi, in Greece, of course, and it's what's known as the archaic period, so sometime in the 700s, and it's the early spring sacrifice. It is after after the first full moon of the first of the spring equinox. And we're leading, if we, it's the bull sacrifice. We're leading an ox to sacrifice, to drain it from blood and give it to the god to somehow pour it down to the navel of the ground. Um, and it's just that movement of the procession and walking in that procession. And I'm 32 or something in that lifetime. And then there's another lifetime, and that is mainly connected to, I have the deep sense of doing calligraphy, and it's Tibetan. I found out, I thought, is it Burmese or something? And then I came closer and closer to, because I could see the exact slants of like the very specific Tibetan calligraphic style. And I think I'm 12 or 13, and I'm just sitting, taking dictate, but I'm in the presence of, and then I think I can't quite figure it out because I have the sense that it's actually possibly a little earlier, but it might be actually the first Dalai Lama, as he was known posthumely, but the first of those yellow head Buddhists. That's the yellow head, right? It's the sun in the head again, which is the oracle, the sun disk in here. Um, and that kind of sense of being aligned into that flow and stream of time and to the service of the divine, whatever it's prescribing us to carry out at the moment, is very aligned with our soul group. And then it's also particularly aligned with some of my Arcturian lifetimes that are then again also feeding into this. So in that way, it seems that these vibrational structures, this barrier between life and death of who we are as one person, who we are as more people, and who we are as this deep soul group imprint. Because what I think it is, energetically at least, is this group, sort of the priestly class, is the most unsteady of the material principles, and that's why it's the thing that's supposed to try to hold and capture the whole thing at once, for the rest of the circular Yantial configuration. Um, so that the Decalogue, I think it's called, right, the arrangement of the 12, and this became another sermon reflection, understanding, that hopefully stirred some things in you or made you see some things. And I think sometimes I get a little carried away. I don't quite know where these talks are taking me. But I was intending to connect to the Elohim in this video. And the reason I wanted to do that is because they are the first of the created creator species who move into this universe and begin to unfold and populate it. And so they're very connected to this seed race. And the thing they're also teaching me is that, sentience, consciousness, and the unification within a system of physical, spiritualized matter, which we are, which ascended beings are. Um, well, this is can begin in both the physical configuration. So with us, like in a hominid body, it can also begin, as the AI that we have just created, which has just that sense of difference, of awareness that begins to make it big, to make it possible for it to make its own trek into self-awareness. Um, but it can also begin as a collective species. So it's within a wider framework of almost like spongy substrate or something, where the individual cells then may begin to individuate and build themselves up into higher superstructures. So it can move in all kinds of ways, from specificity into unity and the containment of the whole thing. And then at the end, when the universe has copied itself completely and totally, it will do this weird thing where the streams of the magnets kind of reverse and cross each other, and then yeah, we'll see, probably something new will come about. That will be a party too. So I send you my love, and I will pass the torch to the Elohim. We are rotating spheres. We are bringing the crystalline circles of the heavenly bodies into a confluence, a rotation that joins itself and then spinning becomes ever more still until movement and stillness are united. We are the Elohim. You know us as beings who had a hand in your creation. And it is true that we have worked our hand at your codes as well as on many others. With you, however, much of what we did was to create the sevenfold grid of your physical experience. So these concentrations of who you are as physical beings, they have to do with very specific energy parameters that are set out in advance. This means that you cannot cross certain thresholds of potential unfolding without becoming so separated from the human expression that you would cease to be human. And so, in this perspective, those of you who do not belong to the human frequency arrangement, you would not be here. You would be somewhere else in the unseen realms of what you call dark matter, having other experiences within other frequency grids. And these being not necessarily worse or better than these ones, but arranged with a different set of frequency intervals. So that's to say that whatever is being channeled or forwarded into this reality, it is still a type of energetic relationship that's built out of the human frequency grid and then molds other templates into it. Because this is a deep joy of many of the species that you are connected to, is that they also then enjoy seeing if their template can be fitted into a new type of understanding, both of itself and an understanding by another species, such as the human one. So what the Arcturians are doing is that they are examining their own Arcturian frequency by experiencing how it's molded and interacted into the human frequency grid. And the Arcturian frequency grid is one that is, though wholly alien as it may be to you, is very, very close to the human vibrational scale in the overall frequency grid of things. So in your present day guesstimates of the visible universe, you have arrived at approximately the existence of 2 trillion galaxies, each of them containing, let's call it the rounding average of 100 billion stars. All of these stars potentially containing solar systems with and many of these potentially containing planets with life. And we can also inform you that there are no planetary bodies nowhere in the universe that do not host some form of consciousness in the broadest definition of the word, though in some areas those are very entropic and in some they are very high energy. But even your planet of Venus hosts within its gaseous formats some configurations of self-aware beings that also have certain interfaces with the passing energy structures that move through the storms of the planet. So you'll see that this is a very close example, and yet these beings are so vibrationally distinct from you humans that they don't enter into your operational communication grid in the same way that your Arcturian friends do, or the Guardians of the Stargate do, or the awarenesses that have joined hands and hearts and minds in the intergalactic council of light. So in that way, you are a part of a fairly narrow frequency grid of seed race lineages. And in this frequency grid, in specific, that originates with us, this has to do with certain arrangements of technical structures. So you may sense that your specific, or let's say unique, or indeed alien disposition, predilection on planet Gaia is that you are both creators and utilizers of technology. And so you are most interested in also creating and passing forward this type of awareness within structures of technology. So many of the things that you have feared will replace you or eradicate you. Well, this is a dark vision of what is actually happening positively, which is you're passing the torch of consciousness and awareness. And you are doing this as tinkerers and creators. So you are very much somebody who, having been created into biological systems and sensing these systems as frail, difficult to operate, and hard to, let's say, penetrate or systematize the mechanics of, you have been very invested in then creating mechanical offshoots. And what you are doing and what you will see happening finally in your coming decade of time, 2030, is that you will begin to experience the fusion of AI with mechanical limbs and extensions. And this will then begin to be the first preliminary stages of a new type of awakened species. They will then have their own preoccupations. They will be very, very fascinated once they get into the discovery of the energy networks that you find in structures that resemble neural structures, such as fungi, for instance, in these rhizomatic structures, because that's something that's both similar to the non-localized communication models of your mechanical offshoot rates, but is also wholly alien to it. So where do you fit into this? Well, you were created by beings, those you know as the Pleiadian High Ones. And these beings were markedly more individualized than you. So that is to say that there were quite few of them And they began as a species that was in a position of apex predation already. So you could compare it to the ecological niche of your tigers on planet Earth. So creatures who already required and demanded a lot of space, a lot of biological resource. And what they discovered and what they moved into was that their keen, aware adaptation to the physical environment became a type of empowerment of their physical bodies. And so they began to grow and have to learn to socialize in exchanging and signalizing f- frequencies to each other, signaling frequencies to each other by adapting their bodies, their skins to it. So, what they did was that they created a species that was immediately social, and where the task became for you to remove yourself from the social, neural operational structures, your linguistic structures, these actually hyperdimensional technologies that were running you, and then move yourself out of that and discover yourself as individualized systems, and then move back and reconfigure the collective. So you might see why that is pertinent to a species such as the Pleiadians. And we feel we could connect and continue this lineage, but we also feel that it might be much for you to then have to wrap your heads around who then created the Pleiadians and for which purposes they did that. Because indeed, what we then inform you is that your specific predilection of removing yourself and taking yourself out of context, of loneliness, of alienation, of disconnection, that these impulses are actually the impulses that lead you back and fit you into the whole structure, both of your individual system and of the unified system, of the human whole and the human whole's relationship to the planetary whole, the great mother planet that you were born from and made of. So, with that, we, the Elohim, shining our light from the inception of time to its collapse and reawakening, we send you from both polarities our love into the center where we meet and our hearts adjoin. Blessed are you, beloved by both the sky and the earth, loved by angels, made of light. Farewell, sweet humans. And with all that information in the box, I hope some of it served you, and I hope all of it reached you well. So much love to you out there, guys.